Hey, I'm Andy Chanley from 88.5 FM, and you have tuned into one of our Here at Home sessions. Today, we welcome in Nathaniel Rateliff. Hey, Nathaniel.
How's it going, Andy?
It's going great. Good to meet you.
Me you as well.
Where am I finding you right now? You looks like a rec room.
This is the control room of the studio in my house.
Fantastic.
But at some point, it was going to be a rec room. Actually, when we built it out, I had planned for this to have like a pool table, and then we were going to put like the control room in the storage area, which is now just guitars. But I ended up finding a Neve console, and so it all needed to like live in this bigger space. And those are some sound panels up there. Yeah,
got some up here. Yeah,
there's like a portrait of Willie Nelson behind me, and yeah, so
I love it. And I also love that the pool table was the initial priority.
Well, you gotta, when you're making a record, there is a lot of downtime, and so you need people to be able to do things, and you can't just have a bar in the house, and you have a little more activities, So
good idea.
So we ended up putting the pool table outside. So yeah, there's room out there for it. Yeah,
nice room for everything. The new album is called The Future. Came out a couple of months ago on Stax Records. New singles, Survivor, which you've heard a lot of on 88.5 FM, and the new single, Face Down in the Moment, just added to the rotation last month. I got to tell you, before we get started here, around this time last year, I was thinking about you just about every night. I'm now cancer-free, but at the time, I didn't know it, but I was accumulating symptoms of lymphoma, one of which is the night sweats. So I felt a particular kinship to you and was thinking about you just about every day.
Okay.
And
it's a pretty horrible feeling. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was shouting son of a bitch a lot too. So we had those things in common. But funny, I was thinking about talking to you, and I realized I didn't really know a lot about you besides your well-known music. So I went on the internets, as you do, and I looked up some things. Like I saw your birth date on onthisday.com, this website, and you can go check this right now. I'm sure it hasn't changed. They have your birth date as October 7th, 1948.
They're off by a handful of years.
The 30
or I look really great for being.
You look great. And he's still on stage killing it, people.
Is that right? 48, I'd be in my 70s. So
you'd be exactly 30 years older, right? So
yeah, so be 73.
Yeah.
Look pretty good. 73. Yeah,
you're holding up pretty well. Yeah, but it's funny. Since I was down the rabbit hole, I looked, and you share a birthday with John Mellencamp and Yo-Yo Ma, the famous cellist, Tom York of Radiohead, Tony Braxton, Kevin Godley of Cream. There must be something to this astrology stuff. All of you guys born on the same day, and all musicians in your own right. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just I'm just curious if those guys couldn't make up their minds either.
Yeah, Tom York.
How wishy-washy they are. Yeah.
And Tom York is 94 years old, according to that website. Out of curiosity, of those people I mentioned, who do you think you'd enjoy sitting down for a chat, a dinner conversation about music with the most? John Mellencamp, Yo-Yo Ma, Tom York, Tony Braxton, Kevin Godley?
Well, it would be interesting to talk to Tom. I've been backstage with him, but I didn't really feel like approaching him. He certainly seemed like he didn't want to be bothered. And, I see Mellencamp every year at Farm Aid, but I only ever talked to his son. I've never really sat down and talked with John for whatever reason.
Speck or HUD? The boys' names? No. Can't remember.
No, now I'm trying to remember which Mellencamp it is.
I should remember. I'm from Indiana.
He never remembers my name.
I should remember. I'm from Indiana. But that you couldn't swing a dead cat without hitting a Mellencamp in central Indiana.
Right. He just put out another record too.
Yeah, that's right. Not long ago.
And there's some Bruce Springsteen on there as well.
So that is a good cut too. Yeah, the one they did. I like that. So this new album of yours, the Future. don't want to read too much into it, but that seems like a sanguine title, upbeat. Why that title, The Future?
Well, that kind of came about from the song, The Future, which at first I didn't even know it was going to be on the record. And then when Bradley Cook came and joined us as a producer, he was just like, I was like, The Future. He's like, yeah. I was like, should it be on the record? He's like, I think it should be the first song. And I was like, okay. And I felt like the content in that song, there's a thread moving through a lot of the songs, and I feel like it's kind of that. And so the theme of the album wasn't really so much as like a statement of what the future is, but more of a question of what is our future. And I was writing all these songs during 2020 for the most part. And so, there was a lot in question as to like what, like, and even now it's like, how are we going to learn how to live with this virus and live with each other if we're so divided. And so I there was a time in there where I certainly pick at politics or religion, but hopefully not too overtly to be offensive to anybody. But those are all things that are just questioning me. I'm questioning what, in some ways, what's the future of us as humans, and yeah, I guess how are we gonna better understand each other? So.
It's interesting because I guess just osmotically get from your music a sense of dynamics. You're talking about these things of ideologies, left and the right, and what we're facing with this pandemic of life and death and security and living your life and so forth. I also hear in your music a real light and dark, low energy and high energy, intimacy and bellowing. And like in that song Survivor, starts off very, almost Boris Karloff, intimate, and then is the chorus is this ebullient shout. Is that something that just there's a real drama to the music that you've made in the past and definitely on this album? Is that something that you embrace and think about?
I guess it's that Libra quality in me. That's the same thing Tom York has, I don't know. I feel like a person of, many characters in one body, and try to allow myself to feel all that stuff. I think even as a group, we can go from brooding, in our own darkness, to just being completely goofballs. And so, I feel like some of that is in there as well. So, yeah.
It has to be fun to perform these songs for you on stage. It's not just, a staid, stoic acoustic set. You're bounding around the stage and having fun with these songs. How excited are you to get out and be able to play these songs? Because I know you're going on tour soon. You're heading to Europe in a month or so, and then you're coming back stateside for Bonnaroo and all of that. You have to be be champing at the bit.
I'm excited to get back out there. We were lucky enough to play a bunch of shows this summer and fall, and we started to kind of work in some of the new material, but it wasn't until our release shows at the Beacon Theater in November that we really got to play all of the songs. And so it's exciting for me to play them. And also, like, I'm figuring out, how do I move to these songs? How do I react to these songs when I'm performing them? And we've also been on slightly bigger stages. So it's like, it's a bit of a challenge for me to feel comfortable and get used to performing and using that much space up. So I'm not just standing in one spot, doing a dour performance. So
yeah. So the last album was a solo album, first time in a while, and I don't want to second guess you or psychoanalyze you about it. I think that artists do what feels right at the time. Neil Young, when you think he's going to do a fine acoustic record. It's, you know, this loud distortion ridden thing, and
Right.
vice versa. What is the deciding factor for you whether an album is going to be a solo venture or one with the band?
I mean, that's what kind of made this record difficult for me, since I had made And It's Still All Right. Um, you know, some of those songs I had on that record had been sitting around for a while, and I was just waiting to release them. And when I did record that, I felt it was important. It felt important for me to record it because of what I was going through, and to kind of take a step back from the Night Sweats and just kind of refocus on what I was doing and writing. And yeah, and you know, and also it was very cathartic record for me to like process Richard Swift passing away, and I'd also gone through a divorce, and those are all things that are, you know, pretty life changing, and we don't really ever have the time to deal with that. And I feel like sometimes it's us as a whole, as a culture, doesn't really take time to deal with those things or consider the amount of brokenness you're carrying around and not being able to speak about it, when that is really just a part of the human experience, and we're all experiencing that together in our own way. And so it should be something that's talked about, rather than it being this sort of singular feeling that you feel that like you're the only one out there carrying this, you know. And so in order to like kind of process all that, I felt it was important for me to make that record. Unfortunately, we didn't get to do a whole lot with it, but you know, and so as I moved into, you know, we did 10 shows and then came home in March on the 13th. And then I guess about around June, I had gotten together with Patrick Meese and James Barone, and then Eli Thompson, who was a really old friend of Richard Swift's. And we kind of would get together around the day he passed, and we were just making music and kind of goofing off in the studio. And Pat wasn't even playing drums, he was playing piano for most of it. And out of those jam sessions came So Put Out. We worked on Survivor, Love Don't Treat You Like That, and then a couple other tunes that we'll be releasing later on. And so that started to feel like a Night Sweats record to me. But then as we got into it, I was really kind of lost, because I had songs like The Future and Face Down in the Moment, Baby I Got Your Number, and I really didn't know where those should live. And then when I brought on Bradley Cook to finish producing the record, you know, he was just like, Future, but he's like, love it. I was like, really? He's like, yeah. I was like, on this record? He's like, first track. And so, like I said, that sort of like shaped the theme of the record. And Brad just continued to encourage me to put songs in there that I didn't know if they should be there, like Face Down in the Moment. And I kind of had to look back at when we were making Tearing at the Seams, and the song Still Out There Running was really important to me. But, you know, like we play that song in the solo set as well in the folk band. And so it, you know, I had to kind of look at that situation and be like, well, if I hadn't put out a solo record, you know, this song would have ended up on the record regardless. So, you know, just kind of listen to Brad, and he was really helpful in making everybody in the band feel really heard.
Does that happen frequently, that you'll find one song as you're recording an album, and that becomes the North Star for the rest of the material? That's not to say that everything else will sound like that, but that you find that song and that you realize is a centerpiece, and it helps everything else kind of just congeal around it?
I feel like it kind of happens song by song, because, you know, like when we first finished Survivor, and I'd started working on that with another good friend of ours, Sam Cohen, and he kind of helped me crack the code on that. And then, you know, that felt like an anchor. And then when, you know, we did Face Down in the Moment, that felt like an anchor. And then the day we figured out What If I and started recording, and I was like, well, this feels like an important song. And it just kind of, you know, kept progressing like that. And so it's funny to be writing, and as these songs kind of come to life, and they always change slightly from the original thought, which is the exciting point of like discovering how that is going to, like, what's going to split off and to change something else, you know, like how is this going to fracture in an interesting way. And so, yeah, it just feels like as you go, each song, you get really excited about that when you're working on it. But then like I got a text from Brad the other day and he said he'd heard Face Down in the Moment on the radio. And he's like, man, this song still makes me cry. I love it. And so, and so you can kind of, you're hoping that happens and you're getting surprised by the material that you're coming up with.
Yeah. I always like to ask these questions. Maybe they're rote, but I think they're sometimes pretty informative about your path. What was your first instrument?
Drums.
Drums. You remember your first drum kit?
I do.
When'd you get it?
It was an Apollo kit. It was sparkly red, and my parents got it for me for my 7th or 8th birthday.
Nice. And
then it took me a while to like really get interested. By the time I was probably 11 or 12, probably 11, I was rehearsing for, 6 to 8 hours a day.
Yeah.
Just trying to play, and it discovered a Led Zeppelin 4 cassette tape in the barn, and
oh boy,
weren't allowed to listen to secular music at the time when I was a kid. And so I like hid that and would just be like practicing to that. And then at the same time in Missouri, we had an alternative station that I could get out in the middle of nowhere where we were living in the fields, and yeah, and just like play along to the radio. Or, even back then you'd put on a radio and put in a cassette tape and wait for the song that you wanted to hear, and then you'd record that, So we didn't really have money to go out and buy new music, so we're just trying to collect it, so making your own mixtapes from the radio. So
your upbringing pretty strict, or a religious one? Were you only allowed to listen to worship music and so forth?
Sort of. I mean, my dad was a huge lover of music, and then towards the end of his life, he started like I think it was because he regretted selling a lot of vinyl that he had collected over the years, and so kind of before he passed, he started to kind of introduce me to Van Morrison, and Bob Dylan was something. He started to listen to secular radio again, and I remember hearing like Rainy Day Woman for the first time, and he's like, you can't sing that because the It'll Stone You wasn't a good thing to sing, but then yeah, and so then when he did pass, I just kind of dug through his closet and found all these records, and Muddy Waters, folk singer, and Muddy Sings Big Bill Brunsey, silly stuff like the Moody Blues that like blew my mind when I was a teenager, and Canned Heat. The band was like a huge influence, discovering the band, and then later finding the Basement Tapes, and the way those guys all work together, and just sort of the lightheartedness of what songwriting can be, while you still have songs there like Going to Acapulco that like make me feel like I'm going to cry. And then there's songs like Apple Sucking Tree that make no sense, Yeah. And, at the same time, I'd also discovered Leonard Cohen, and, that sort of the brooding side of what writing can be, and sort of the way to find creativity and alienating yourself, I guess. Yeah, so it was like kind of all of that. It was just, so cool to discover all of it. And I still keep trying to find more stuff I haven't heard. So
yeah, well, I like your dad's record collection for sure.
Thanks, yeah.
What do you think you'd be doing now if music didn't exist?
I think the best job I had was a gardener. And so sometimes I fantasize about disappearing into a climate, where I can live on the beach and be a gardener for somebody and just not be anyone other than a gardener. But then at the same time, I love the work I do with the Marigold Project. And if I wasn't a musician, I would probably try to spend more time trying to help people out in my community and other communities. So,
if people want to join you with the Marigold Project, where can they go to get involved?
I can't remember if it's marigold.org or
That's cool. Well,
The
I'm
Miracle
sure
Project.
they'll be able to find it with a Google search. But while you're looking that up, I'll just say once again, for fans of your music, The Future, it came out just a couple of months ago on Stax Records, and the singles Survivor and Face Down in the Moment you're hearing on 88.5 FM and 88.5fm.org all the time. And go look up the Marigold Project. Did you find, is it
Yeah.
.org?
It is themarigoldproject.org.
All right, go find out more about
which
that.
I believe you can find it on our website as well. But yeah.
Well, certainly great to talk to you for the first time, Nathaniel, and get to know you a little bit. When you're in Los Angeles, let's have you come in the studio and do some stuff. It'd be great to have you perform for our listeners exclusively.
Well, I'd love to come in. I know we're going to be out there. So yeah.
We just have to find a place big enough to fit the entire
yeah.
place. Awesome. Well, all the best to you. Have a great time touring, and best wishes for all the success.
All right. Thank you, sir. Appreciate your time and your support. So see you soon.
88.5 FM, KCSN, and KCSN HD1 Northridge, Los Angeles. KSBR and KSBR HD1 Mission Viejo. A service of California State University Northridge and Saddleback College. Member-supported public radio. Streaming on the web at 88.5fm.org.